Hey, Vinyl community, welcome. I am here once again with my good friend Matt Phillips, and we are here to talk about one of our very favorite bands, the Beach Boys. We are going to do our top 10 Beach Boys songs of the 1960s. And then we are at a future date going to do our top 10 Beach Boys songs of the 1970s. So we're just focused on the golden era, if you will, of the 1960s. So Matt, why don't we start off? Why don't you tell us a little bit about how did you get into the Beach Boys? What was it that kind of drew you in? How long have you been a Beach Boys fan? Just a little bit of history behind your fandom.
Okay, sure. So I'm really mostly known for, not to look at me that you would notice this, but I really grew up listening to heavy metal and hard rock and all that stuff. But I've always really appreciated great singers and great backing vocals and pop stuff. So I got into the Beach Boys. Well, it would be through my parents who actually grew up in that era. But it's kind of funny because my parents had a couple of cassettes like Best of Volume 1 and some stuff like that. They never actually owned any albums. So I would listen to them and I discover songs that are a couple of that I'm going to talk about in my honorable mentions, like songs that you wouldn't normally hear on the radio. And but it wasn't until I got a copy of the Made in USA collection on cassette from, I think that came out in 1987. So that had all the hits, but then it had Heroes and Villains. And I was like, what in the world is this song? And my parents played it in the car and they hated it. They hate that period. And I was like, I love this stuff. And that's really what got me kind of into diving really into the Beach Boys music.
Yeah, well, there's so much to discover, and Heroes and Villains is definitely a great place to start. I got into the Beach Boys when I was younger. I didn't even know how old I was. Had to have been in grade school. Like I'm thinking I was probably like maybe 7 or 8 years old. And my uncle still lived at home with my grandparents, and I used to go up to their room because they used to have all this vinyl and all this cool music. It's where I heard the Rolling Stones for the first time, and they had all those little singles on the rainbow, the classic Capitol rainbow, or not the rainbow, the what do you call it, the swoosh.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Let me see what
I think I have one of those.
yeah.
I know what you mean. Let's see. Oh, like this?
You might get yours before I do. I should have had more prepared.
I have a CD here.
Yeah, so this is kind of the classic label. This is my Good Vibrations single, but yeah, I just saw that. I was like, God, that is such a cool label to look at. And the music also, I remember hearing California Girls and Help Me Rhonda and all those early singles and just blown away. My young ears, it really appealed to that. And then when I got into school and college and all my friends, and we were all listening to Led Zeppelin and Van Halen and Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. It was like, I just kind of pushed the Beach Boys away. I was like, oh, well, that music's not cool. I'm not listening to that anymore. But then, back when a little older, after I started having kids, started revisiting some of that music, and it's like, this music is really fantastic. It ages really well, and it brings back all those memories that I had when I was younger and listening to them. So yeah, I still now a huge Beach Boys fan. I mean, they're definitely top 5 of my favorite bands.
Yeah, they're probably when I sit and think about who are actually my favorite American rock bands. I wouldn't say necessarily live, but as far as like their musical output, I'm putting them right up there, top 2 or 3, along with Kiss or whoever. But
Sure.
yeah.
All right, well, let's get into your honorable mentions, Matt.
Okay, so I've got 5 honorable mentions, and the first one is Wendy, which actually came off of the All Summer Long album. I don't even think they mention it right on the cover here. It's not until you see it on the back of starts side 2. This is a song I've loved ever since I heard it. I think it was on one of those compilation albums, and it wasn't until college that I was listening to it, and Tim came into my room, and he's like, what is this? I've never heard this song before." And I'm like, "Really? You've never heard Wendy before? It's got the ding, 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 ding." And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." Here's a song that Tim, who knows everything about music, even at that point, had never heard this song before. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic one. And that was one too that I didn't discover until I got the Endless Summer, that double album.
Oh yeah.
I just had never heard it growing up. And I'm like, oh wow, how cool is this? And then Brian Wilson actually named one of his kids Wendy.
Yes, exactly.
Funny too.
uh, so that's my number five. My number four is a song that never actually technically appeared on an album. It's "The Little Girl I Once Knew." So I don't have that on anything other than I do have this really awesome collection. It's called "The Warmth of the Sun." And I think for a while, this came out like in 2007. This was one of my favorite collections of Beach Boys songs, because this is sort of like it was a reply from the fans, were like, all the songs they had done a previous best of thing, and the fans were like, "Oh, you left off all these other great songs." And of course, "The Little Girl I Once Knew" appeared on there, along with Wendy is even on here as well. So but yeah, "The Little Girl I Once Knew," I mean, that is kind of like a precursor to Pet Sounds, maybe.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say so. You know, and the signature, what's notable about that particular song is the start and stop.
Yeah.
Before the Beatles with "Hello Goodbye" or "Strawberry Fields Forever," where the song just, stops dead, and they're like, "Oh, what?"
Yeah,
And
let's get
kicks in again, but like at full volume, full bombast that just hits you over the head. It's very cool.
yeah, those kind of dramatic periods. And it's like, according to my notes, I guess it was they started writing that song during the very beginning of the Pet Sound session, so it kind of makes sense.
Hmm.
So that's my number four. My number three, so of course the Beach Boys have a ton of car songs, and not to spoil anything, but technically no car songs made it on my list. However, the song "Little Honda," it's not even 2 minutes long. I think it's like 1 minute and 52 seconds. I've always loved this song, and it's off of the "All Summer Long" album. I think I saw you show this album in a video not that long ago. I, of course, got the delete bin cut out. I
Hmm.
have a list on my notes on my phone. I have a thing, albums to find, and for some reason I think I'm missing a few. Like, they re-released this, and there's a few tracks that are missing on this record for some reason. But
Yeah,
yeah, um
Capitol deleted the Beach Boys' entire 60s catalog with the exception of Pet Sounds in the early
yep.
70s after their contract ran out and they were in a dispute with the Beach Boys over royalties and stuff like that. And so they began reissuing them under different names. Like my Beach Boys Today is called Dance Dance Dance. I can give you like an example of what one looks like, but basically they took what was essentially the Today album, and I don't know why they thought they had to change the titles on these, but the album, well, just to give you an example, the album Today,
Yep.
they changed to Dance Dance Dance,
Oh.
and they eliminated some tracks, like "The Back of My Mind" is not on here. Bull Session with Big Daddy's not on here, which is not a big loss, but
Yeah.
anyway, they did that for some reason. And like my Shutdown Volume 2, Shutdown Volume 2, they renamed Fun Fun Fun, and they took some tracks off of that. And then they issued the tracks that were left over. They created this compilation. This was like a Green Value Capital label. And so those missing tracks, they stuck on here.
Okay.
And I have no idea why they did that. I mean, it never has made any sense to me, why Capitol did the things that they did back then. But, that's essentially, why that happened.
I have a bunch of those and some where they actually mix two albums together, but I'll talk about some of that stuff a little bit later.
Mhm.
Just really quickly on my number three, Little Honda, my honorable mention. Um, it has actually one of my favorite lyrics, like a misheard lyric. The lyric is, "It climbs the hills like a mattress because my Honda's built really light." And I was like, climbs the hills like a mattress? Mattress. Okay, so that means that obviously it's easy. So it wasn't until really long later. I mean, I don't know anything about bikes or motorbikes.
Mhm,
Matchless is apparently a very well-known British brand of motorbikes. Um,
mhm.
I took a look at a picture of one. I think it was the same kind of bike that Steve McQueen rode in the Great Escape movie. But anyway, yeah, I just thought that was one of my favorite kind of misheard lyrics from the Beach Boys.
Right. No, that's funny. And I love that rhythm at the beginning because you feel like there should, they could have added drums to that to kind of pump it up, but you just got that. It's just so cool. I really felt like when they actually break into the chorus, Denny's drums could have been mixed a bit higher, but
Yeah.
I think it's a great song.
Awesome. My number two is Kiss Me Baby, and that's from your Beach Boys Today album. I don't have a copy of that. So a bunch of my honorable mentions now are all going to be very nostalgic as far as love songs. And I do have that on a Beach Boys Today Summer Love Songs CD compilation. So this one's really well done, I thought. I think that's a picture that they used for inside the box set at one point. But
Yeah, that's the cover of the booklet of the Good Vibrations box
yeah,
set. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So "Kiss Me, Baby," about an on again, off again relationship. So a whole bunch of my honorable mentions are these sort of a bunch of these love songs that really could have almost made it into my top 10. There's one that really did make it into my top 10, but "Kiss Me, Baby" is my number two.
Okay.
And then with my last honorable mention, I guess my number one honorable mention, I'm going to cheat here a little bit. It's all songs off of the Summer Days and Summer Nights album. It's actually three of the songs: "Girl Don't Tell Me," "Let Him Run Wild," and "You're So Good to Me." And I just literally could not pick one over the other. So, and they're all on the same record. So I thought, well, I'll just kind of mention all those songs. Again, a couple of songs that I love from the Beach Boys that I don't think were really big radio hits or anything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
we'll consider that a medley, uh,
Yeah.
those songs. But yeah, no, I may have a few of those in my list. So if we get to those, we can talk about them.
Right on.
Really, yeah. But I know it's so hard to limit a list like this, down to just a few because there are so many fantastic tracks, especially in the 60s, where it was like, God, how can, Brian Wilson was just coming up after fantastic masterpiece after masterpiece. And, they used to be all singles, and then he started concentrating on albums. And then you had all the great albums from the mid 60s, onward. But well, my honorable mentions, my first one is going to be a track that was left off of Smiley Smile. It was from the Smile Sessions, and it's a song that found its way onto
Oh,
2020.
yep.
Kind of collected some leftover tracks, some singles, a few newer things. I mean, this was a cobbled together. It was their last album for Capitol, their last proper studio album for Capitol. It was released in 1969, and the song is Cabin Essence. That one a lot. It sounds so out of place on here because even though it was only recorded 2 years before, it's just really so unlike any of the other material on here. It's definitely got that crazy production style. Just the whole, I mean, if you have to hear the song if you haven't yet, but it's about like the railroad infringing on Native American territory
Yeah.
in the West, and it's just got so many interesting not only vocal harmonics but just the instrumentation. You got kind of the plucked banjo, and then you've also got the Beach Boys singing like boing, 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 you know, just the whole, it's such an interesting song. If you haven't heard it yet and you're a Beach Boys fan, I'd be very surprised, but definitely one worth checking out. The next one that I'm picking is In My Room, and that's off of Surfer Girl. Could have picked this one higher easily, but I had to make room for all the ones in my top 10, but always loved this. And it's funny, I remember being in a dentist chair, being worked on, and that song coming over, you know, the radio that he had in the room there, and thinking, oh, you know, I feel so much more relaxed now. It's such a soothing track.
Yeah.
And it's a meditative kind of track about, you know, when I'm really feeling stressed out or overwhelmed with all my problems, I just sit in my room and I get in a good headspace. And it's where, you know, and that's how, if you know anything about the history of Brian Wilson, you know, his father was pretty abusive, and his father used to beat the crap out of Dennis and Carl and himself.
Yeah.
He would just kind of, you know, when his dad was kind of raging out of control, he would just go into his room and kind of, you know, hide away there. And I think that's where that imagery comes from. But yeah, love that track. And then the next one is, I know I pulled it here, and it is off the, Friends album.
Oh, great.
Friends off here. I really love that track. I love the escalating harmonies. Love those harmonies. I love it's just kind of cool. It's sort of like these group of friends sitting around talking about, oh, remember when I taught your parents how to cutting your hair, and remember when this happened, and just sort, you know, it's just a charming song. I love that one. Another one that I'm going with, I think this is my fourth one, is Darlin'.
Oh, wow.
Single off of here. Love that track. It's just kind of got a punchy R&B feel to it, which was a bit unusual for the Beach Boys at that time, but I think it's catchy, it works, and I think it was a fantastic choice for a single. And then the last one that I am choosing, I'm trying to find which album it is off of here, but I am going to go with Don't Worry Baby. Love that one. The Phil Spector, you know, was very much influenced by Be My Baby, the Ronettes track, which Phil Spector produced, and is very, you know, bombastic. It's got that wall of sound. And Brian Wilson was very much in awe. Phil Spector was his idol, and he definitely, you know, took that sound and crafted his own unique piece of music out of it. But I love that track. I love Brian's voice, the falsetto, just everything. Such a great lead vocal, and that to me is just perfection. So,
right on.
Honorable mentions. And now we're going to get into our number 10. So these are the ones that we settled on from such a long list. I know mine was sprawling and it was hard to kind of edit it down, but your number 10, Matt?
Well, guess what? We're going to talk about that song again. Don't Worry, Baby. So that's, of course, from the Shutdown Volume 2 album that came out in 1964. I don't have a copy of that, but I do have one of their Best of Beach Boys Volume 2, and I believe it's on there as well. So you've already talked about some of the inspiration for that song, being the Ronettes and Be My Baby. Lyrically, I think it's kind of interesting because it's a car song, but it's not a car song. It's a love song wrapped around a car song, where he's talking about, I guess I should have kept my mouth shut when I started to brag about my car, but I can't back down now because I pushed the other guys too far. And she told me, baby, when you race today, Just take along my love with you. And if you knew how much I loved you, baby, nothing could go wrong with you. I love that. Car song and a love song.
And he doesn't have to care if he wins the race or not. It's not about the race anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But much larger. Yeah, absolutely. But
so that's my number 10.
So my number 10 is, and I know people are going to be a little, I know people are going to think, why is this ranked so low? I can't believe this is such an epic song. How could you have it ranked so low? But I am going to go with Good Vibrations. Now, it's a classic Beach Boys song. There's no question about that. It is one of Brian's epic masterpieces. I think for me, the reason why I have it ranked number 10 is just over familiarity. You know, when I was compiling this list, I tried to think of what are my top 10 favorite Beach Boys songs to listen to and in what order, if I had to choose, would I listen to them? And I just had Good Vibrations down at number 10. I think because I've heard it so many times. No question, it's a great song, but I just like the other tracks so much more than that. And, you know, Good Vibrations was a track that had begun life during the Pet Sound sessions. Brian was working on it during those sessions, just was not able to record it to his satisfaction. And so after the Pet Sound sessions were over, he returned to it, bounced from different studios, Sunset Sound, and you know, he's moving all over, trying to get the sound that he wanted, kind of shifting session musicians in and out. And then he finally wrestled it and got it to perfection and released it in, I believe it was the summer or early fall of 1966. And of course, it went to number 1. It's a fantastic track. But for me, you know, it's my number 10. I had to put it in the top 10, but I just love the songs above it.
We'll definitely be talking about that song later for sure.
Oh, I'm sure of it. You probably got it where it really deserves to be in the ranking. So
right on.
Yeah.
So my number 9 is actually from the Pet Sounds record. It's Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulders. So I've got a few different versions of Pet Sounds that'll be showing throughout, but I picked up this 180 plus pure virgin vinyl pressing from, man, I want to say this is from the 90s. It's got a limited thing on the bottom, but it's one of the first kind of high quality, like reissued vinyls that I'd ever bought. So Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulders. Of course, that came off of Pet Sounds in May 1966. I find the songs really romantic and kind of movie-like. It's interesting because there's no actual guitars on this. And in fact, I believe Brian is the only actual Beach Boy on the song. It could have really been, people talk back and forth like, is Pet Sounds like a Brian Wilson solo album? I mean, theoretically, it probably could have been. I know that another song like Caroline No, I think was actually supposed to be a Brian Wilson solo song at some point to put some, but then the record company needed something out from the Beach Boys, so they released it as a Beach Boys song. But anyway, I just love that song. It's got that listen to my heartbeat, listen, listen, listen. You just get sucked into it. You got to listen to this stuff with the headphones, obviously. But yeah, that's my number 9.
Well, and I love how it starts out with that ominous cello.
Yeah.
Beginning. It's like, ooh. And think about all the stuff the Beach Boys had released up to that point, and then you hear that track and you're like, oh my gosh. And then you've got the strings that come in to kind of add some more texture and emotion to it. It's just a great track. And it's such a soft, but, you know, Brian Wilson, you know, when he had finished with Pet Sounds, he and Marilyn, I think, listened to the album just in the dark. And they were both like crying at the end of it because it was such a gorgeous piece of work. But imagine this song in particular being so effective. And it's just a great, great track. So, yeah, absolutely a fantastic one. My number 9, and this was one of the ones I think that you included in your medley. of songs, and I'm going to be going back to this album quite a bit in my top 10. But You're So Good to Me.
Yeah.
Love that one. And I mean, it doesn't have like the fantastic production values of Pet Sounds. It's not like the Wrecking Crew that you really notice. It's just kind of like a bam, 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 but it's the harmonies on that track that are so fantastic that totally drive it home. It's just the la, 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 all of it together. It's a great track, and I've always had a particular affection for it. So that's my number 9.
Awesome. My number 8 is again the song that really piqued my interest about the Beach Boys, and it's Heroes and Villains. So of course, people heard the first version of Heroes and Villains on the Smiley Smile kind of pieced together album. I actually heard it first on the Beach Boys Made in the USA compilation. Now, I didn't have this vinyl back then. I would have had just the cassette version. I kind of like this little gatefold thing they got going on. It's a nice little story about the band.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about Heroes and Villains a little bit. Of course, it was from the Unfinished Smile project. And I believe it was the first song that Brian Wilson and Van Dyke Parks actually wrote together. And it was supposed to make you think about Americana and the Old West. And it was kind of like, was it supposed to be like the second song on Smile? I can't remember, but it kind of set up the whole theme of the record.
Yeah, well, that was a big mystery, until Brian Wilson recorded his Smile album for his solo record. People were always wondering, well, what would Smile have looked like? And I think most people kind of guessed that Heroes and Villains was going to be near the beginning, if not the very first song. And so the way that Brian has ordered it, all the, in these years, just recently, Our Prayer starts off the album, and then it goes into the whole G, the and then you go into Heroes and Villains. So it's of course it's the first track on Smiley Smile. But what you're missing, what originally would have been in the Smile version of it was the In the Cantina Margarita
Dance.
yeah, is missing, but it's still a great single. What they ended up releasing was fantastic. I think the reason why it didn't maybe do as well is it's just not as universal a theme as Good Vibrations is. Not everybody's going to get into, they're not going to connect with the song about, the Old West and heroes and villains. It's not going to resonate with as many people as a song like Good Vibrations is, even though it's a fantastic production. But we might be talking about that a little later on my list.
Right on.
That song. So, okay. Well, my number 8, I'm going to go to Pet Sounds for the first time. I Just Wasn't Made for These Times.
Awesome.
From side 2. This is actually 50th anniversary pressing, 180 gram pressing version that I have. I've got a mono 180 gram pressing also of this. But yeah, and it's pretty much Brian actually sort of telling the story of Pet Sounds and Smile, how he was way ahead of everybody else, and the rest of the Beach Boys couldn't seem to get into what he was trying to do and why he was going off brand for the Beach Boys, why he was taking them in a new direction, an unfamiliar direction, a risky direction, because, we're talking, the 60s, where the record buying public associated the Beach Boys with car songs and songs about the beach and summer fun. And now he's wanting to talk more introspective about, getting older and aging and complicated relationship issues. And in Smile, he completely, he goes off into, it was basically kind of like a song suite about, America and how it grew and, just all the different complexities that went on, you know, and taking different styles of music. And so it's really, you know, I think Rhapsody of Blue in many ways informed Brian's songwriting during that period of time. But yeah, I just wasn't made for these times. Brian is out of step with the times. He's thinking more forward. Granted, he's taking more LSD than the average person probably at that time also. But nonetheless, I think it's a gorgeous song. And I really like the instrumental where it's just the pure instrumental track on the beach or on the Pet Sound sessions, where you can just hear the instruments in the background, because sometimes we concentrate more on the vocals and some of the nuances of the music gets lost. And I think that's a perfect example of it, because that's just a gorgeous piece of music if you listen to it without the vocals.
Jeff, did you get a chance to watch the I Just Wasn't Made for These Times documentary that I think it was made by Don Was, the guy from Everybody Walked the Dinosaur. I don't know. He's obviously known for other stuff, but
yeah, he was with Was Not Was. Yeah, I've seen that. I've actually got it on DVD. It's paired on DVD with Beach Boys and American Family, or it's some sort of the documentary from like the early 80s that the Beach Boys commissioned or something. But yeah, no, it's a fantastic documentary, and they re-record. There's actually the soundtrack to that I've got on CD, where Brian re-records some of those classic Beach Boys songs.
Yeah, right on. So my number 7 is California Girls. Some people, I guess, would call that the ultimate Beach Boys anthem. So that's from Summer Days and Summer Nights album. But I've already shown that. I just wanted to show this. So this is one of those things where they've reissued some of the Beach Boys stuff. This is called the Beach Boys California Girls, and it's a special double play. And it's one of those things where they're repackaging their music. The double play is actually also the All Summer Long album. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, that's a really terrible photo of the band. Like it looks like they're kind of homeless and sitting in dirty water. And I don't know. It might have been taken actually during the Holland album sessions. I don't know what that's from, but I always thought that was a weird kind of compilation. So California Girls. Everybody knows California Girls, and of course, that's got one of my favorite song intros, I think, of all time. Now, I keep having this discussion actually with Tim from Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Of course, David Lee Roth covered California Girls, and I keep warring with Tim about David Lee Roth took the song and made it cheesy, and that's what Dave does, and that's fine. And Tim's like, it's the same thing, it's the same arrangement. And I'm like, no, it's not at all. It's not a simple song. I actually printed off. I looked at, of course, the Wrecking Crew were the people that were the musicians on this song, and I was just like, the list of all the people that actually played on Good Vibration. This is not a simple song at all.
No.
Again, like I said, I love that intro, and the way Dave did it, he just kind of sounded like to me like a kid playing like on a xylophone or something. Whereas it really has an emotional build on the classic track.
Yeah, it's like a kids bop version of Good Vibe or California Girls. No, I agree. And actually, you know, Matt, I picked California Girls as my number 7 too.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm gonna, you know, show my copy of that. And yeah, I agree. That double play album that you have there, that photograph is just so off-putting. It's like that's the last thing I think about when I look at that picture is California Girls. I think, hell. But you know, it's a great song. I mean, you got the Wrecking Crew on there, and you know, that's when Brian would actually he'd work on a song and take as many takes as it took to get it right. And it's so fantastic. And I think, you know, it doesn't help that you've got so many cover versions of it out there that I think water down really the beauty of the song. And people hear all these other cover versions. The David Lee Roth example is perfect because, you know, Dave is just over the top. He's a showman. He's got kind of a campy take on the track. If you've seen the video, you know, that also, I think in some ways gives people the impression that, oh, it's just a throwaway, lighthearted kind of fun track, and it's not. It's definitely, there's so much more. The Beach Boys track is the one to listen to, and if you think like Tim does that, oh well, it's just a a simple pop song, it's really not. You got to check out just the intro alone. I could really stop listening after that intro, and I'd still feel satisfied. But yeah, great track.
Right on. Cool. We lined up there.
Yeah.
So my number 6 is When I Grow Up to Be a Man. And I don't have the record that this is from, but I do have from that Good Vibrations box set. It came with this kind of bonus disc thing, and it's got like instrumental tracks and versions of When I Grew Up to Be a Man on here. That's the one that I've listened to quite a bit. I like that it's got all the different Beach Boys like coming in and out on the song. And the lyrics are kind of interesting. He starts talking about, will my kids be proud of me or think their old man is really a square? So it's got some of that kind of obviously 60s like colloquialisms or whatever. And then one of the things I kind of listened to in that song, so you hear them saying in the background, 14, 15, 16. So he goes all the way up, and I right at the very end of the song, he's like, right close to the fade out, 29, 30, 31. I keep listening, like, how far does this go? I think it goes up to 32. I don't know why they stopped there, but yeah.
Well, I'm sure to the Beach Boys back then, that seemed really old. To be 32, you're practically an old man. But
yeah.
Yeah, no, that's funny. I love that track too. And the first and only time I think you hear a harpsichord. Beach Boys song too. So yeah, very cool. Well, I'm going to that same album that When I Grew Up to Be a Man is from, the Today album, but the track I'm going with, and I've always loved this track, is She Knows Me Too Well.
Oh, okay.
I love the lyric. It's basically, it's one of those songs kind of similar to the themes on Pet Sounds. Like, I think its closest sister is You Still Believe in Me, where, I can act like a jerk. I can be a real pain in the ass sometimes, but nobody knows me better than you do. You put up with all my BS. And I love just the ooh at the beginning, just that progression right there, that vocal progression makes the hair on my arm stand up. And I love at the end where he's just kind of the outro where he's just that whole the ending there where it's Brian. He never sounded better before or since with his vocals. It's just fantastic. I love it. It's one of those tracks most Beach Boys fans either they're not aware of it because it's a deeper track, or maybe they just don't appreciate it the way that I do. But I just love that one. It almost ranked a little bit higher on some of my other Beach Boy videos. I know I've ranked that song closer to the top, but in retrospect now, I think I've got it where I'm comfortable in my top 10.
Awesome. So now we're already into our top 5. And a bunch of these songs we've actually already talked about. So my number 5 is the title track from the Friends album. So to be honest with you, the Friends album, I don't know what you think about this, but if I was to put this on for just your average listener, this is kind of like a litmus test for me to see if you're really like a Beach Boys fan, because I don't think the general public would really be into this record at all. It's a little strange, but I love it. I love listening to it. It's at times it's probably been my favorite Beach Boys record. What do you think of Friends?
It's my number 2.
Okay.
Rankings. It's my second favorite Beach Boys, and you wouldn't know it because it's definitely underrepresented on my 60s list, which is not to say I like it. Individually, I think it does the songs don't necessarily strike me as classics. However, when you put it all together, when you listen to it as a whole album, Brian, I think, as at one time or another called it his favorite Beach Boys album. And it is a song that you can just sit down and chill with. And I was collecting all the Beach Boys CDs back in the 90s when they started putting those 2 for
The doubles. Yeah.
the double ones. And I remember getting friends and listening to it and thinking, well, Pet Sounds was so weird to my ears when I heard that for the first time. Friends is entirely, you know, it's sort of the same experience where you're listening to it and it's like, wow, they've gone in a whole other direction. But it's definitely a mellow album. It's in some respects kind of lo-fi, but I really I love it a lot. And it's, the songs are very charming, and it might take a couple of listens, but it's definitely and also to think about the fact that it was so out of step with the times. I mean, you know, the Beach Boys consider the Beatles their contemporaries. They're always trying to keep up with the Beatles. And you think about, you know, you listen to Friends and then think about what the Beatles put out that year, which was, you had Hey Jude and Revolution, you had the White Album, you had Lady Madonna. I mean, all this more like aggressive, up tempo, you know, harder edged, and yet there was a balance even on the White Album. But, and then the Beach Boys were just kind of like just kicking back in their easy chairs, singing, you know, these homespun lyrics, but, you know, really not, and I don't want to diminish the lyrics, but it's just, you know, you got Brian talking about busy doing nothing, just a lazy bossa nova about, I wanted to write a letter to my friend, and paper and my pen, and then I wrote his address down, and then the second verse is all about, if you want to cut, if you, you know, he's giving directions basically to his house from some unknown point in California. Take a left, and then you go a little further down, then you take a right turn. Then it's just, it's so funny, but it's totally Brian Wilson. Only Brian Wilson would write a lyric like that, you know. But yeah, I love Friends. That's a long-winded answer to your question. But.
Yeah, the Friends song is actually, it's a waltz. And it's got a lot of sax and clarinet on it. But yeah, it's it definitely, it took me a few listens to get into, but I absolutely adore that album. And I found Capitol did these reissues again. I think this was in the 70s. So really stark kind of artwork. But this is the Friends album. It says originally released in 1968. And on the other side of the collection is Smiley Smile. So, and then inside you've got some really old looking car photo, but yeah, that was my number.
I think they released a double album like that for Wild Honey in 2020, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
where you had the artwork that bears no relationship to the original album, but they, you know, they repackaged it in all sort of ways. The only way they didn't package it was the way they were originally intended. Can you imagine if they had done that with the Beatles catalog? People would have lost their minds, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, my number 5, I am going to go to Pet Sounds again for Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Yep.
I think it might have been my dad had that on 45. And just love that song always. It's definitely a nostalgic remembrance for me hearing that song again. I love the opening, you know, not quite as majestic as California Girls, but I just love the opening of Wouldn't It Be Nice? You got Brian, you know, singing about, you know, wouldn't it be nice if we were married, and kind of, you know, what the flip side of the coin to when I grow up to be a man, singing about, I can't wait till I'm older. Isn't it going to be wonderful when we can be together and live as a married couple? And, you know, now married couples think, oh my gosh, how naive was this guy? But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So my number 4 is off the same album, and it's God Only Knows. I think Tim might have even sent this to me. It's rather dirty, little 45 of the song. I think it was the B-side of Wouldn't It Be Nice?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of Carl's most beautiful vocals. Like I think I associate that song the most with Carl when I'm thinking about really great Carl Wilson songs. So again, it's got tons of accordions and harpsichords and French horns and bass and tambourines and sleigh bells. The song's just full of instruments. And I think I heard at one time it was Paul McCartney's favorite song. God
It
only
still
knows.
might be.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I really liked during the, did you get a chance to see them on their 50th anniversary kind of reunion tour, kind of 2012-ish? I saw that
No.
tour. I actually had to go to the United States to see it. And when they performed God Only Knows live, of course, they actually played a track from Carl, like a live video from Carl from 1980, and played along with that. And I thought that was a really sweet tribute.
Oh, wow. That is
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that idea. But yeah, no, that's a great track. And yeah, Paul McCartney has in many interviews called that his favorite song, and definitely inspired, I think, Here, There, and Everywhere from the Revolver album is just one example of how the Beach Boys inspired the Beatles during that period.
yeah.
My number four, and again, I keep going back to this album, the Today album. We already talked about it, When I Grow Up to Be a Man.
Awesome.
So, you know, we've already talked about it, so, you know, I won't go into it again, but I love that track. And obviously we both connect with it.
Yeah, that was that went back and forth, almost made my top 10. So
Mhm.
my number three is off of Pet Sounds again. It's Wouldn't It Be Nice, which you just talked about not too long ago. Of course, I have quite a few different versions of Pet Sounds. Got the vinyl and stuff that was showing you. I picked this up. I can't even remember when this came out. It's like a fuzzy version of Pet Sounds, and it looks like this kind of carpeting or something.
I think that's the 30th anniversary.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, it says 40th anniversary of Pet
40th.
Sounds. So yeah, I had to get that one when I saw that in the store. So so Wouldn't It Be Nice? It wasn't like a huge hit. It peaked at number 8. I think it was number 4 in Canada. And so that was the period when Brian was writing with Tony Asher. I think Tony was like an ad executive, or maybe that was Gary Usher. But I know that song is like you were saying, it expresses like the longings of youth and all the things that when you're a kid that you really want to do and kind of get out on your own. And yeah, absolutely love that song.
Yeah, no, that, like I say, that's a great one. And I think really the fact that didn't get closer to the top of the charts sort of set off alarm bells at Capitol Records. And that's why they issued that Best of the Beach Boys so closely after Pet Sounds. You know, the Beach Boys' first greatest hits compilation, Best of the Beach Boys, was released, I think, only like a month or two after Pet Sounds came out, as kind of a panic move, because I thought, oh my God, you know, Pet Sounds is going to tank and we're going to lose money on this. We got to get something back out onto the market. And they rushed it out. And I know it hurt Brian's feelings because he realized Capitol didn't have any faith in the album. And he, you know, was like, oh, you know, maybe it's not as great as I, you know, he started to lose some of the self-confidence, which eventually undermined the whole Smile project. And, but anyway,
I read about actually just doing some notes about the song. Apparently that was the hardest song for them to record, as far as Brian being really specific about them trying to get the vocals down.
mhm.
And of course, there's that tempo change in Wouldn't It Be Nice? And I also read that so when the Beach Boys performed that song live in the 60s, they never actually did the tempo change. They just kept going with it. It wasn't until 1973 when they sort of started adding people to the live band that they really started performing these songs like you would hear them on record. So
Yeah, there was no way that they would have been able to perform a song like that, or God only know. I mean, I think they did probably some of the tracks out there, but you know, the Beatles they didn't perform a single track off of Revolver, you know, on their last tour, because it was like, we can't even try. Okay, my number 3, and this is the only vinyl version, at least back in the day, that I think the song was available on. I'm going with The Little Girl I Once Knew. And this is the Best of the Beach Boys Volume 3. So you had Best of the Beach Boys, which I think came out in 1966, the fall of 1966. Then Best of the Beach Boys Volume 2, which came out, I believe, in 68. And then I think this came out in late 1969. But it's a weird compilation because it has Frosty the Snowman on it. It's like, I know you're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but that's really the best you could come up with for this compilation. But yeah, this has The Little Girl I Once Knew on it. We kind of already talked about that, you know, why that's a great song, because it was in your honorable mentions. But yeah, I love it. It's so fantastic. The whole stop start. I love the guitar intro, that guitar lick. You got the almost as like a fairground organ, just so many parts of that. The Wrecking Crew is on fire. It's just, and I've done a video about, I did a video where I kind of talked about the Beach Boys progression in the 1960s, and I get a little more in depth on why I like that song so much. But that is my number 3.
I love it. So my number 2 is In My Room. Yeah, rank that one really highly. It's actually the first song I ever tried to sit down and put my headphones on and try to play along with the song. I think I had an acoustic guitar, but I was trying to play along with the kind of the bass line. So you've talked about that song a little earlier. Came off the Surfer Girl album in 1963. So you talked about some of the issues with the kids when they were younger and their dad. Dennis and Carl and Brian all actually slept in the same room together, and I think that was kind of the inspiration for the In My Room. I like that it features all 6 Beach Boys on the vocals going on there, and apparently it was the last of the songs to feature David Marks on the song. So that's why I said all 6 Beach Boys, and it was the last one to feature him until like 50 years when they kind of got back together and did the reunion stuff.
Right, yeah.
Just recently, and just recently, I don't know why, I just realized this, but they did a German language version of In My Room. So it's the same musical track, but it's sung in German. It was released on a 1983 Rarities album. And here's the kind of bizarre thing. It's so instead of In My Room, it's Guns Allein, Guns Alive. And I was like, Guns Alive, a German, what is this thing? That's really not appropriate. Yeah, so that's my stupid In My Room story. But yeah, number 2 for me.
Well, and I wonder if they did that because the Beatles had 2 German versions of. They had one for "I Want to Hold Your Hand," "Come Give Me Deine Hand," and so for "She Loves You." But have you seen the version that they do? I don't know if it's on the Ed Sullivan Show or one of those 60s variety shows where it's just the Beach Boys and it's strictly a string accompaniment. There's no the instruments that are on the album. I hate the version. I think it just sounds so cheesy. It sounds like something, you know, Perry Como might have recorded. Yeah, it's got them all. It looks like they're standing in a library. You know, I think Brian's even holding like a book or something, and they're all there in their suits and they're singing with this horrible string accompaniment. It's like, oh, you ruined a great song. But you know, it was the 60s, so they did stuff like that. But my number 2, and I keep going back to this album also, Let 'Em Run Wild, which also kind of one of the signposts to Pet Sounds. This side too, you know, you got California Girls, then Let 'Em Run Wild, You're So Good to Me, you know, all tracks that were in my top 10. It's a killer second side of an album. and then they ruin it with Summer Means New Love and I'm Bugged at My Old Man. So, I mean, but that's typical, you know, Beach Boys had to have filler on their albums, you know, at least one or two tracks, but yeah, Let 'Em Run Wild would have fit perfectly on Pet Sounds. I feel like it's got that whole, I could see it on side two, but it's got the whole, you know, the Wrecking Crew, but there's, you know, some brass in there. I love the heavy drums on it. And I love the lyrics too. Brian, wrote the lyrics to this track, and it's got one of my favorite rhymes ever. Now that you don't need him, well, he can have his freedom. You need him and freedom. It's like, how brilliant. Wrote that, the same guy who wrote Johnny Carson, you know, or who wrote Busy Doing Nothing, came up with, you know, a brilliant lyric like that. But you know, it's basically trying to convince a girl like, oh, you don't need that loser. I'm much better. Let him go off and cheat on, you know, sow his wild oats, but I'm your man, baby. But I love that track.
Awesome. So my number one Beach Boys song, you could maybe guess this one because you've already talked about it. It's a pretty huge song for the Beach Boys. Came out in October 10th, 1966. Probably should have been on the Pet Sounds album, and it's Good Vibrations. So this is a fairly recent reissued CD single of Good Vibrations. And a little while ago, as you know, Tim and I do an awful lot of record store day videos. And the Beach Boys have been putting out stuff along with like the Doors. I always look forward to new stuff, like just something that's never been out before. And they put out this sort of Good Vibrations and Heroes and Villains, side A and B. And then on side C and D, it has these kind of early outtakes of the song. So I thought that was a nice little 10-inch package. We already talked about the thing about the cosmic vibrations and Brian walking with his mom and the dog barking and giving off the vibrations. Something that I've always been curious about. Now, Good Vibrations is one of the only Beach Boys songs that I actually know how to play on bass. I kind of figured it all out and watching some videos. Carol Kay says she played the bass line. I don't know if you're familiar with the famous bass player Carol Kay, and she was kind of part of the Wrecking Crew. And but it also said there's a guy, Ray Pullman, who was like the first electric bass player in LA, might have also done the bass line to do 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 to Good Vibrations. Now Carol Kay was she started out actually as a jazz guitarist and then moved into bass when you know, she was trying to make a living and they had an opening, and it kind of sounds to me like a Carol Kay kind of bass line. So I just always go with that. Yeah, Good Vibrations. There was like 90 hours of tape apparently when they recorded this song that they had to go through to make the final, you know, 3.5 minute song. So
yeah, and another interesting footnote about Good Vibrations is, you know, Tony Asher, who wrote the lyrics for Pet Sounds, actually wrote lyrics for Good Vibrations.
Right.
Didn't use. Mike Love rewrote the lyrics, but they used Tony Asher's lyrics on Brian's solo version of Good Vibrations from his Smile album. So you hear, and I think there might be a version with the alternate lyrics on the Good Vibrations box set. It's either the Pet Sounds sessions or the Good Vibrations box set. I don't recall which one.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear. I like Mike Love's lyrics better, actually. But yeah, I think it fits the song more. And my number one is going to be off the same album that Good Vibrations ended up on, the song that made you fall in love with the Beach Boys, Heroes and Villains.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey.
I gave it some thought. I'd never ranked it this high before, but just a great song, no matter whether it's a single version, the version that was intended to be on Smile. I don't care whatever form it takes. I think it's a great track. I love the intricate vocal harmonies. all over the place. The vocal harmonies are almost as impressive. I mean, just the instrumentation, the vocals and the background instrumentation, I think, is just so fabulous. It's a great marriage. It's one of the greatest tracks off of Smile, if not the greatest track. And that's my number one.
I'm with you there. I heard a story about in the early to mid 90s, Brian went to see this band called the Wonderments, who kind of feature into his life a little bit later. But they were performing, I think they were performing Heroes and Villains live because they were like huge fans of Brian's music. And Brian happened to be there at this show. And that's what kind of convinced him that, wow, man, if I'd had this band behind me back when I did Smile, we might have actually finished it and might have actually been able to take it on the road. And of course, down the road, he ends up hiring the Wonderments band. It became Brian's kind of solo backing band. And they did finally come together and do his version of Smile live, which I think is terrific. So.
Yeah, no, well, that's great. And kind of the, one heartbreaking story about Heroes and Villains is Brian had the single, and this was the first Beach Boys single since Good Vibrations. So there was so much anticipation for it. And he was so excited, he took the acetate over to a local radio station and wanted to give them an exclusive, like, here's the new Beach Boys single. So Brian and his entourage show up at the radio station and they give the single to the DJ. Like, here's my new single. I want you to play it for the world. And the DJ is like, it's not on the playlist. Sorry, can't play it. And he's got Brian Wilson there standing here with the first new single since Good Vibrations. And the DJ is like, sorry, it's not on my list. Can't play it. And so apparently he got on the phone with his station manager. And the station manager is, you idiot, you got Brian Wilson right there. Of course you're going to play it. And so they played it. But it was just one of those, another nail in Smile's coffin, that couldn't get it on the air, right away. But so.
Yeah, I'm so glad that eventually was able to overcome a lot of that anxiety. And the Wonderments, he got together with them and was able to put that album together, and we could finally hear it. So.
Yeah, because I don't think any of us really had any hope that it would ever see the light of day. We'd ever see what Smile was meant to sound like. So happily that happened.
Wow, this has been really fun. I actually can't wait. I hope we get to do another one of these about the Beach Boys, some of their later era stuff.
Yeah. I look forward to our 70s list, because that's a whole nother list altogether. So many different styles of that era. But thanks again, Matt, for joining me. And I like that there was some overlay with our list, but there was also some different stuff that we had on here. So fun. Again, you can check Matt out on Tim's Vinyl Confessions. He's a regular contributor. And definitely, I hope to see a lot more of Matt on my channel as well. So everybody, thanks for watching and take care.